everyone, Brian Fisher of FisherFAST. Haven't uploaded in quite a while, and today it feels good to be back with this stunning 2004 Mercedes Benz SL55 AMG. This car is spoken for already, and today I'm just here to show you the work that was done on the vehicle. It has done approximately 42,000 original miles. It does have 0 accident history. Also a clean title, clean Carfax on this one. And there's a lot of modifications and maintenance that was done to this vehicle. I want to talk about only a handful of the stuff that was done. In the description below or in this video, I'll post a picture of everything that was done to this, just because there's too much to cover. I don't want this video to be 2 hours long. So I'm going to start off by walking around the vehicle. We'll take a look at the cosmetic enhancements, as well as talk about some of the power modifications as well. And just on the power side of things, before I forget, this car made 580 wheel horsepower and 636 pound-feet of torque to the wheels on a dyno jet. And that was right around 15 psi and on 93 octane. And there's a small disclaimer: we did have to detune this car just a little bit, as the customer that bought this vehicle lives in California and unfortunately has access to 91 octane, and we kind of find the limits of the 91 octane when we were tuning this car. So we had to take about a pound of boost out, and also a degree and a half of ignition timing as well. So it's making about 35 to 40 wheel horsepower less than it would on the 93 octane. We want to keep these cars safe and want them to live for a long time. So that's why we take the safety into mind when we're tuning and building these cars. So it's going to live a happy life on 91 octane, no worries now. So like I said, I'm going to shut up for a minute and just walk around the car, and then we'll come back and talk about a couple of the highlights of the cosmetic stuff on the outside here. Alright, so while we're up here at the front of the car, you can notice there is a few major areas of difference between this and a stock SL that really makes it look more aggressive and really modernizes it. And I always say this as an example, but this would kind of be my interpretation on a modern day SL55 if they were still building this body style. And this is the kind of stuff I would see on a new car had this car been built today. It kind of modernizes it and it brings it up to current standards. So the first thing we can see is the headlights here have been modified, and this isn't a, I see other people do like a cheap vinyl to put over the front of this just to darken the whole headlight lens. That's not what's happening here. The headlights were taken apart, disassembled. Each individual component was removed, cleaned, and stripped. And then I picked out a color combination that felt suiting, that would suit the overall tone of the vehicle. So inside we got a satin black housing that goes all around the inside. Behind that there is a matte gunmetal metallic for the shroud, and that's the part right here. And around the actual lens itself is a very bright silver, so this really pops. And I like this style because it kind of reminds me of like a Murcielago headlights or a Carrera GT headlight. If you check those out, they have a very similar setup, and it really gives it a very aggressive look. with that bright ring on the right side here. And this isn't just a cosmetic modification, but while I was inside the headlights here, I also modified the light output. So they got brand new projector lenses in the middle, and also the internals for the projector itself were modified to put out more light. There's more output and a lot more lumens than stock. So when you're driving down a dark road at night, these lights will shine, you know, a mile down the road. But it's still controlled. It's not going to blind oncoming traffic or on the other side of the road. It's a very nice defined beam pattern. And the color of the lights is a nice bright white as compared to a yellowish white. That's how they were stock. Right next to that, there's a single fin grille that is from the SL55 style with a nice gloss black mesh behind here. You got to leave the Mercedes emblem chrome, that's just a given. And then the fin itself was modified. This is the same matte gunmetal color, if you remember from the headlights here. So that carries on to the exterior as well. And you're going to see a couple more instances of this color combination as well. Down below that, the three grills, one on the left, one on the right, one in the middle, were taken off. They were straightened and then primed and painted in a very high gloss black paint. So they look just like brand new now, and those stone chips, rock chips or imperfections in them. The Mercedes emblem on the hood was also changed, and this is the more modern black and chrome style, which I love. It really ties in with the rest of this car now. Black and chrome, black and gunmetal, as you can see. It does have the smoked side lights here on the side of the bumper. These are usually orange, so that's also matching now. Down underneath we have these beautiful stance concave wheels finished in gloss black. This is a 20x9 in the front, 20x11 in the rear, with my signature tire size, 255 35/20 up front, 295 30 in the rear, just to give you a little more cushion, a little more sidewall whenever you hit those potholes. Hopefully you don't, but you gotta prepare for anything. Behind the wheels, the brake calipers were removed from the vehicle, cleaned, and all disassembled, and finished in a very bright fire red powder coat. I love powder coating these parts. If you've ever seen a painted caliper that was a few years old, whenever you get stones or rocks that tumble around in these wheels, they beat up these calipers, and if they're painted, they chip very easily and they look like crap in just a couple years time. Powder coat will pretty much always look brand new. Just hit them with soap and water whenever you're cleaning them. They're always going to look great. The side vents were also taken off. These were painted in a gloss black, the mesh, and then the fins are finished in that same matte gunmetal as the single fin grille up front in the headlights. Up on the hood, looks like you're ready for takeoff here. Looks like a fighter jet. This was also finished in a gloss black, and then the fins themselves in that same matte gunmetal one. I love doing a gloss and a matte color, as the fins really pop on top of this gloss now since they're matte, and they look awesome. Does have the updated style mirror housings here, done in carbon fiber with the LED turn signal light. Same thing in the rear. This rear wheel, I love the design of this rear wheel. Whenever you look at it this way, you can't tell too much. But if I walk around to the side here, you can see just how much that wheel dishes in. It's very concave in the rear. It says it's 20x11 for that wheel, and it really gives it a crazy aggressive stance. when you're looking at it from the side. Starting up top here, we do have the carbon fiber SL55 style rear deck lid spoiler. Below that is the clear third brake light. The tail lights were also upgraded as well. These are the newer style on the 07 and 08 cars. So they have a lot more LEDs in them, no incandescent bulbs. And the stripe in the middle is a little less dark. It's a little more smoked. And you can actually see through it. It looks, you wouldn't think it'd make that big of a difference, but it really does. It makes the car look a lot newer with those lights. Down below we have this big, aggressive carbon fiber diffuser. This is the quote-unquote big fin style, something that I had made by the manufacturer and brought back. I just love this style with these sharp angled fins as compared to the rounded fins on the more mass-produced ones. This really makes the car look similar to the SL63. It really gives the back end a very aggressive look, especially with that carbon spoiler up above. To the left and the right of that, you have some nice dual-walled 4-inch outlets on these tailpipes that really fill up the back here. You can see just how big these pipes are. You can fit your whole fist in there. It really fills up the back end. No pun intended. Over here, he also did the same thing on the door handles. So this is going to be the same matte gunmetal metallic as found in all the other accent pieces, just to match and bring everything together. Let's take a look under the hood. And here we go. This is the money shot. By far my favorite place to be with this vehicle. Said there's a lot of stuff done here, so I'm only going to talk about a few things. As you can see, the surge tanks and valve covers were both powder coated in the same gloss fire red color, so everything matches. It has the carbon fiber 3-inch intake system. While the supercharger was off of the vehicle, I did paint this in a very high gloss and metallic silver, so this thing really pops in the sun. As you can see, it's almost blinding when you're actually looking at it. As far as some of the performance stuff, the supercharger pulley was changed. The supercharger cooling system was completely reworked. It was split from the single system as designed from the factory. Now it runs a separate reservoir up here where the original starter battery used to be. So this is filled for the supercharger coolant. It's a separate circuit now. It's all done with 3/4 inch lines and hoses. It has an additional very large heat exchanger up front, as well as having the stock heat exchanger moved from the back of the radiator stack, or the middle where it is from the factory, up to the front, so it's going to get all the cold air first before anything else, which really helps to bring the intake temperatures down and keep your power up as you do more and more pulls, or the hotter it gets. The fuel injectors were also changed. This is running 550cc injectors. Some of the maintenance stuff up here has brand new ignition coils, all 8. Has new ignition wires, all new spark plugs as well. It says running 1-stage colder plugs, as it is making over 200 horsepower more than what came from stock. So you need to keep the combustion temperatures down, keep those spark plugs from detonating. Heat wrap some of the coolant lines as well. It does have the belt wrap kit, which keeps more pressure on the supercharger belt. Has the Gates RPM supercharger belt. Highly recommend that. Even if you're stock, throw one of those belts on there. Again, that's RPM by Gates. Shut down the hood. So as far as performance, we've got a ton of stuff. Has a full exhaust system done. Has the mid-length Kleeman exhaust headers. Has high flow cats. Has a full custom 3-inch stainless exhaust system, all fabricated in-house here. Nothing off the shelf. And this thing sounds wild when you're driving it down the street. It's not obnoxious by any means, but it is loud whenever you got your foot all the way to the floor. And when it's not to the floor, it actually sounds pretty docile. So you're not going to attract unwanted attention when you're just cruising around or going to pick up the kids or whatever you may do in this thing. Let's put the top down. To do that, just pull back on the pedal here towards you. And away she goes. We'll take one more look with it with the top down while it's outside here. And then I'll pull it back in so we can get a better look at the interior, as it'll show a little better in the shade, I think. Alright, so let's pull her into the garage here, and we'll talk a little bit more about the interior and some of the maintenance that was done on the car. So here we are back inside with the vehicle where it's a little cooler and the lighting is a little better, to show you the interior and talk about some of the maintenance items as well at the end here. So as I mentioned, this car has right around 42,000 original miles on it, and you can see that it looks almost indistinguishable from new. We're talking about 120,000 plus car when these were new, 15 to 20 years ago almost. Now it sounds crazy to say that. But the interiors and everything in general, the fitment on everything, the quality of the materials used was very high quality on these cars. And they wear extremely well. And that's the upside. Even on the passenger seat, it looks like it was hardly ever sat in as well. There are a couple of things that I personally don't like on these older cars on the interior that makes them feel very dated when you're driving them, and not as sporty as it should be. So there's a few things I changed to kind of make that tone feel as aggressive as the outside without overdoing it. And the first or biggest detraction from the interior for me personally would have to be these accent pieces or trim pieces that are on the doors, as well as the center console right there. And from the factory, I believe there was 3 wood variations. There was 2 really light color woods. There was a darker, almost black wood, which wasn't that bad, to be honest. And there was also a faux metal or like stainless look as well, which wasn't terrible. The newer cars, 07 through 11, you could get a carbon fiber interior trim package, which looks very nice, but they're usually cracked due to age when I see them, and they're a very rare option. You hardly see them at all. So what I've done is take the original wood pieces that were on the car and had them remade with high gloss carbon fiber and then clear it over top of that as well. And you can do this in a variety of options. You can do like a matte finish instead of high gloss. You could do a forged carbon fiber, and that just depends on your personal preference, obviously. But with this one, we got a lot of gloss carbon, as you can see, all over the car, so it's no brainer to just match that inside here as well. And that carries over to the center tunnel here as well. Same thing, the high gloss carbon. And the nice thing about this is the fit and finish of this is just as good as the OEM pieces, because they are the OEM pieces. You can get some of these aftermarket cheap carbon kits and they don't fit as well. It doesn't have the same kind of bracketry or holes cut out, and they kind of flop around a little bit, or the gaps won't be as tight as these OEM pieces would be. So it kind of gives you the best of both worlds, the OEM fitment with the upgraded carbon fiber as well, which I really like. And then also the shift knob was upgraded as well with this perforated leather and the carbon fiber insert on the middle there. This car does have the very desirable keyless go as well, and panoramic glass roof, if you happen to notice it in the video when we were outside. So the next thing, or biggest attraction for me, there's not a lot of them, kind of nitpicking a little bit, but the steering wheel on these vehicles, when they were stock, and I know I said this before in a previous video, but if this is what it reminds me of, it's a school bus steering wheel. It's almost pencil thin. The leather feels very smooth and cheap, and it's a big detraction when that's the one thing you're looking at the entire time you're driving the car. It's the thing you're holding whenever you're driving the car. So you want to get something that matches the sportiness of the outside and makes you feel like you're driving something special, and I believe this wheel does do the trick. It does have the flat bottom here, perforated leather on the sides to match the gear shifter, and then smooth leather on the top with a contrast red stitch in the center, again to match the powder coated pieces for the brakes and engine bay pieces. Also, it does have the updated aluminum paddle shifters here instead of the plastic buttons which the stock steering wheel has on the back. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about the stereo on this vehicle. I know a lot of people are interested in upgrading the stock head unit because they want modern navigation, they want Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, they want to be able to look at apps, view YouTube, and this and that. And for me personally, this is a car that when I get in it, I want to hear the exhaust. I want to feel the vibrations from the big blown V8. I want to drive the car. I want to experience the car, and that kind of stuff is just in the back of my head, I could care less about it, to be honest with you. There are times that I do want to listen to the radio when you're going on a long, highway cruise, or you just want to zone out for a little bit. And the good thing about this is the stock stereo in the 03s and 04s sounds great, in my opinion. Now, if you said, the 05 through 11 cars, that stereo is horrible. And funny thing about that is the first car that I ever had that wasn't an 03 and 04 was actually an 05 SL55. And that car only had 12,000 original miles on it, believe it or not. That's one that I wish I would have held on to, because I'm sure it was worth a boatload of money right now. But when I first got that car, it was like, there's something wrong with the stereo. It sounds like an old transistor radio. There's no bass, and I'm not just exaggerating. There was zero bass, and the quality of the sound, the treble wasn't there. It was just like a tin can. So I started to do all kind of diagnosis on it. You're looking at the subwoofer under the floor panel there, looking at the amplifier, trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with it. And in the end, I found out it was working as designed. And that's just the way those stereos sound. They're horrible. So I can understand somebody wanting to upgrade one of the 05 through 11 cars with some better stereo components. But like I said, the sweet spot for these is the stereo sounds great. The only thing that it's missing is a lack of inputs. So you're limited to a CD player, which obviously no one uses, and FM AM radio, which I bet 15 to 20% of people still use. It doesn't have Sirius satellite radio, but I personally feel that's kind of dated now too. It's the same music over and over on that, and the quality of streaming that from satellites is pretty much garbage as well. So what I've done is upgraded the stereo a little bit in regards to your input. You can now stream music from your phone via Bluetooth, and it sounds phenomenal if you use a high quality source like the Spotify HD, or there was one that I can't think of. It was something else that has a real high quality bitrate streaming service that I can't think of. I might think of it later on. But this does have a high quality DAC built into the Bluetooth receiver, so your music's going to sound good. You're being streamed digitally. And also I added this Clarion audio equalizer here as well. And the reason I did that is just to be able to fine tune the music a little more. The stock stereo does have treble adjustments for treble and bass, obviously. But the bad part about this particular year, 03 and 04, and whenever you're listening to auxiliary and you change that bass and treble, the next time you go to start the car, it defaults those changes back to 0. Why does it do that? I have no idea. And I've looked in the programming, and I can't find any kind of way to turn that off. If somebody does know how to turn that off, please do leave it in the comments below. I'd love to be able to know how to do that if possible. But my workaround was to install the equalizer here. And you do have 7 bands of adjustments you can change, including your bass and treble in various frequencies here. And the nice thing about that is it's kind of set it and forget it. So what you want to do is put in some type of music you listen to the most, like rock, rap, techno, country, whatever, and set these knobs up to where it sounds good. You turn all the way to the right, turn all the way to the left, you move it around in the middle to where you can hear a difference. So yeah, that sounds great. And then it's basically set it and forget it. You're done. You don't have to ever look at this again. And your music's going to sound the same every time you get in them. And everything in here is done very nicely. It hardly takes up any space. All the wires are tucked away. You don't see anything. You still have a lot of room for your paperwork, cables, phone, wherever you want to put in here. So that's kind of the interior in a nutshell. It also was cleaned and detailed on the inside as well. The leather was cleaned and conditioned. The carpets were scrubbed. All the vinyl trim pieces, the dash, everything behind the seats was all cleaned and has a UV protectant put on it as well. So everything's been kind of sterilized, for lack of better words. And it looks, stunning on the inside now. Speaking of the cleaning on the exterior, I throw in a complimentary detail as well on these full build cars. And this isn't just a wash and dry type of package. I take a couple of days, 2 to 3 days, to do this interior and exterior detailing. And the exterior does get fully decontaminated with a clay bar, and then it's a 2 or 3 stage paint correction depending on how bad the paint is and the color of the paint. And then it's either topped with a synthetic sealant or topped with a ceramic coating, just depending on customer's preference as well. And if you ever owned an older white car, it's hard to get a real high gloss on a white car, just because it has basically no reflection as compared to a black car or a darker color car. And this paint came out absolutely amazing. You can just see how high gloss it is and see all the reflections on everything. Speaking of that, while we're in here, maybe I'll just do a quick walk around again with this fluorescent lighting, just to show you how nice this paint is, and then I'll wrap things up. Even these trim pieces here under the window usually look pretty torn up as they're just anodized metal. But on this car, they look just like new. So I'll wrap up talking just quickly about the maintenance and why I do it on these cars. You may ask yourself or say, the car only has 40,000 miles. What are you doing all this maintenance for? And the simple reason is most of the time it doesn't need all of it. Yes, it needs 60, 70% of it. But I'm trying to make these cars reliable in the long term. I know I bought enough of these to where they always suffer from a lot of deferred maintenance, just from people putting off doing things or not doing them just because they're expensive. So I take a lot of that guesswork out of it. So you're buying this car and it's a turnkey package. You don't have to worry about this thing breaking down every 3 weeks whenever you go out on a drive. You can get in this car and drive cross country with no hesitation whatsoever. And some of the things I like doing are the common maintenance items first, such as it has brand new tires, brand new wheels on it. The brakes were gone through, brand new rotors front and rear, has brand new brake pads, brand new brake fluid. The brake lines were changed to stainless high performance lines. All the fluids in the car were gone through, such as the engine coolant, supercharger, oil. The transmission fluid had gone through as well with a new gasket, pilot bushing, fluid and filter. New spark plugs, engine air filters, obviously cabin filters, wiper blades. A lot of the gaskets and seals, valve cover gaskets, engine oil cap gasket, the engine mounts replaced, transmission mount, camshaft sensor, crankshaft sensor. Other things that you really need to get in the car and start driving it, such as the alternator, the starter were both replaced, fuel filter was replaced, oxygen sensors, the ABC suspension was gone through with a brand new fluid flush filter, all new accumulators, pulsation dampener. The front valve block was replaced with the newer design. It's less likely to sag in the long term as well. Both batteries were replaced as well, the starter battery and the consumer electronics battery. The tensioner, all the belts. I mean, I could go on with a huge list. The crank, the original crank pulley that always separates due to age, since it is kind of epoxied on together, that's replaced as well, as I've had 3 or 4 of those fail even on low mileage cars. So that's something I do as a big ticket item for preventive maintenance for the next owner as well. And kind of speaking about preventive maintenance, and I was talking about those batteries. I'll show you this last thing here, I don't believe I showed it outside. Oh, that looks back here. So to raise that glass up out of the way, you just use this button here. Trunk was also detailed. Funny thing about this particular car too, it actually has a spare tire kit from the factory in it. You don't see too many of these spare tires in these cars. Usually there's a cargo tray underneath. But like I said, it has a brand new battery there. And whenever we were talking outside about, you know, the upgrades and performance, I mentioned that I moved the starter battery to the rear of the vehicle. So this is the starter battery now. And this particular battery is kind of interesting. Normally I wouldn't, you know, talk about it, but in general, I usually use an AGM style battery that you can use in an enclosed environment, such as in the trunk, for this type of setup. But due to supply chain issues and just, you know, the normal world we live in today, I couldn't get that battery, and it was on back order for a few months. So I did go to the next best option, and this is a lithium battery, which is, you know, 2 or 3 times more than what a standard AGM cost. But the upside to that is this battery weighs somewhere between 4 and 6 pounds. Like, I put this on a scale and it literally weighed that much, and it's incredible holding it next to a regular you know, liquid filled battery. And these things fire up immediately. Like, the voltage is instant with these starter batteries, and you don't have to worry about no kind of spills or nothing, because it's, you know, a lithium battery as well, like I said. And these are supposedly going to last, you know, 2 to 4 times longer than a standard liquid filled battery as well. So you won't have to worry about replacing this probably for 7 to 8 years, something like that is what the guy told me over a Brill whenever I purchased this as well. So I believe that's going to kind of wrap everything up. And like I said, I'm really happy and proud of this car. It came out phenomenally. It drives great, sounds great. And this is the way that I would build it if I was keeping it myself, so I didn't spare any expenses on it. And I really hope that the new owner is going to be happy when he sees this thing. If you have any desire to build one of these for yourself, you want to do this similar type of package with maintenance, modifications, please do feel free to reach out to me. You can leave me a comment below. I've been posting more on Instagram lately, just because taking up a lot of time with videos sometimes doesn't work that well, so it's quick to throw a couple pictures up on Instagram. You can check me out at FisherFAST on Instagram, or send me an email to FisherFAST@hotmail.com. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.